Hey everybody, JC here, and welcome back to another edition of TNI News. Today is Thursday, February 22nd, 2024. Now, before I get into the crux of today's video, first I just want to let you guys know that I am planning on having a live stream later this evening. So this is kind of a special bonus video, but hopefully you will be able to catch that. I'll be going live at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The primary topic of discussion for tonight is speculation on this year's HasLab for both G.I. Joe Classified and Marvel Legends. So again, hopefully you can tune in for that. But I wanted to take this opportunity, and really I'm addressing one specific person in today's video, and that is Todd McFarlane, owner and founder of McFarlane Toys. And of course, McFarlane is celebrating his 30th anniversary in the toy business. And I want to be, I definitely want to congratulate him for that milestone. And this isn't like meant to be a hit piece on Todd or his products, even his digital ones. But in regards to his recent attempts to get into, for lack of a better term, NFTs, I really, find that when I hear him saying things, which I feel like he first started this, making these kinds of statements last year during Toy Fair in an interview with Pixel Dan, which let me just play you a little snippet here from that interview, which you can also check out the entire interview. I'll put a link to that Pixel Dan interview in the video description below. But here's just a little snippet in regards to Todd's digital stuff and basically his defense against anyone who wants to criticize it.
They just don't ever get to buy it, or you have to come up with an alternate way to get it to them.
Yeah.
And so I understand that there are people who just go, no, I just want the physical stuff. I get it. I'm with you. Right?
Yeah.
But there are people who live in this world where their only choice is to collect digital or nothing.
Sure.
And I'd rather have them there.
Yeah.
So you have to give them another option of how can you collect a bunch of stuff and not clutter your 400 square foot house.
Sure.
And the answer is you got to go digital, right?
Yeah.
And so usually with older people, that they're like,
well, it's hard to understand, right? Especially like we've been collecting this physical stuff for so long, so sometimes you're like, I don't understand what you mean by collecting a digital picture. Like, what does that mean?
But they're going, there's no value. Right. I don't even know why they want it and all this other stuff.
Yeah,
and I just go, dude, like, I don't care, especially old people. I go, you're already doing it.
Yeah.
So this thing that you go, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't know why people do it. You're doing it. It's on your phone.
Yeah.
Go to your gallery.
Yeah.
Every one of those photos
yeah.
is digital.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, is there any value in that picture of your grandchild? To you, there is.
Of course.
Right?
So, I didn't know we were going to walk in here today and get like a lesson on NFTs with Todd McFarlane.
No,
no, it's amazing. No, I love the way you're explaining, like offering different things for different people, and everybody collects differently.
My answer has always been, if it's not for you, don't buy it.
Yes.
But for some people,
that is absolutely
for some people.
So first of all, and I hadn't really noticed this the first time I watched this interview, but when you look at Dan, and I don't want to, speak for him, I can't say definitively what he's thinking, but just looking at his expressions when Todd kind of hijacks the interview and starts going off on the NFT stuff, it's like, oh, okay. Dan's like, yeah, okay. All right, let's move. And then Todd just keeps on going and going and going. I feel like Dan's thinking in his head, what the hell is going on? Now, Dan doesn't want to push back because my guess is, he's afraid he might alienate Todd and never get any more interviews, which unfortunately in this industry, that is a legitimate concern. If you ask hard questions that might make these guys look bad, they tend to basically not want to talk to you anymore. So, but anyway, this is what I wanted to address specifically. So for me personally, I don't get the appeal of the NFT. Spending money on pictures to me is ridiculous. They're not collectibles. And, just using his example in that Pixel Dan interview where he talks about, people cherishing pictures of their family members that they keep on their phone. And he's 100% right. But the big difference between that, and what he's trying to sell you is you don't pay for those pictures of your family members on your phone. You took those pictures, with your family. That's why you're basically taking a picture to, capture a good time in history with your loved one. And you didn't pay much. You didn't pay somebody for that picture. And I'm not saying that, there are photographers out there. Obviously, there are people that go to a professional photographer and they'll take a picture of their family and stuff. And obviously that photographer gets paid, but that's not real. They're not buying that as a collectible. And that's a totally different type of thing, I think, than what these NFTs are, which I don't even know if technically Todd considers these NFTs, but that's definitely in the category. I put the stuff that Todd has been peddling with the digital pictures as an NFT. And I don't think NFTs caught on. They certainly tried. They tried pushing the NFTs, trying to convince people that this was the next big thing. And I don't think it worked. And I don't know if Todd got sold by, somebody sold Todd on this whole NFT digital picture thing. And so he ended up investing a lot of money trying to, be on the ground floor of the next big thing. But I don't think it's worked. And you can kind of see that because when Todd started out with these things, he was selling these as separate products. But that's where I want to come to my next point here, where Todd starts talking about anyone who criticizes these things are essentially trying to censor.
And maybe because I'm an artist, right? And the thing that always got the hair up on the back of my neck was censorship.
Sure, yes.
If you don't like my art, I can live with that. But if you tell me my art shouldn't exist, that's censorship. Just don't buy it.
If you don't like it, move on, right?
If you don't like broccoli, just don't buy it and
just
take it
don't
home.
eat it.
And guess what? They don't.
Yeah.
But what they don't do is they don't go on the internet
and yell about broccoli.
And they don't get the manager and go, how dare you have it. They just walk on by. And I've said for decades, if you don't like what we have, walk on by.
So first of all, I think that's a very dangerous thing to say no matter what. Because, basically, saying that any kind of criticism is censorship is kind of ridiculous. Yes, there are appropriate ways to criticize something, giving somebody constructive criticism as opposed to somebody who's just going off on a tangent or being, calling you names or whatever. That's ridiculous. But just giving somebody a legitimate criticism or even an opinion saying, this is not something I'm interested in, and I don't even, or even to say, I don't really understand why anyone would want to pay money for this. I think that's a completely legitimate statement to make, whether it's in person with a group of people, whether it's online in a message board or, whatever. I think those are completely legitimate things to state. So, trying to claim that any kind of criticism, and that you should just, if you don't like it, just ignore it and let other people enjoy it, I think is disingenuous, and a little bit dangerous, because then you start applying that to any kind of criticism for anything. And it's like, all of a sudden you're basically saying you should just shut your mouth and not speak up about anything. Now, again, I want to be clear here, because there's a right way to criticize something and there's a wrong way. And oftentimes, especially on social media, people tend to take the wrong way. But I definitely feel like legitimate, there should be, you should feel free to, give legitimate criticism about something as long as you're respectful about it. And, and certainly once you've given your criticism, I think, you have to be prepared to move on. But at least when we're talking about things like this. But anyway, what I wanted to specifically address was this idea, which I've seen Todd, was in this interview that he is the first time I heard him start saying this, but I've been seeing him saying it more and more about, criticism is somehow censorship. And while I think that's just bogus all around, what makes it even worse is that Todd had originally started the digital stuff as just selling it as a separate component. But what you're seeing now, and my guess is because people weren't really, buying into this whole digital thing, is he's now trying to include it with the physical products, which means you're actually having to pay more for that physical product And what it translates to is he's trying to force you now to buy the digital aspect by including it with a physical item that you may want to add to your collection. And that right there completely blows out of the water any argument that you have that says something along the lines of, well, if you don't like it, just ignore it and move on. Because now you're trying to force me to spend money on something I don't want. Now, that's a tactic that is used quite often. The whole Build-A-Figure concept is based on that, right? Because, you do a wave of figures, some of which you may not be interested in, but you're going to end up buying them anyway because, you want that Build-A-Figure. And so if you want to be able to complete that Build-A-Figure, you've got to buy the figure, even though otherwise you probably wouldn't really do that. That was that was the idea behind the Build-A-Figure when it was originally created. So that we can get people to, buy figures that they might not otherwise buy. Let's include this cool Build-A-Figure pieces in each figure, so they get the whole wave. We see it with 2-packs often, where they include a figure that nobody wants with a figure that everybody wants, and so they're forcing you to buy an extra figure just to get the figure that you want. So again, this isn't really a new concept trying to force you to buy something that you might not otherwise want. So I'm not criticizing him necessarily for that in itself, but then don't turn around and sit there and say, oh, well, if you don't like it, just don't buy it. But don't sit there and criticize it or try and say it's a bad thing, because that's censorship. And that's the crux of what of the message I want to send here is, it's up to you if you want to, try and include the digital with your physical products. And like in the case like last week that we saw with those 3 DC figures, the Hal Jordan, the Aquaman, and the Batman.
McFarlane, we've got another line of toys coming out here, right? This is a combination between DC Direct and McFarlane Toys Digital. We call them our Fidgetals. That's physical and digital. And
it worked because those figures sold out. Now, I don't think those sold out because of the digital component. They sold out because people wanted those figures. But now everyone that has bought those figures will have the opportunity to at least test the waters and see what this digital stuff's all about. And that's what Todd was hoping. I don't think it'll be successful. I think most people will just end up throwing the code away. I still don't think that people are going to be interested in doing that. And when they start to see that, they're kind of being forced to buy these, it's not like the digital is free in the figure. You're actually paying a little bit more money for that figure because the digital component has been added. And I know this because you can look at other things that Todd has done where he's done, especially with the statues, where he's taken the same statue and offered it without the digital code and then offered it again with the digital code. And you can see the one without the digital code is cheaper than the one that has the digital code. And if he's going to offer, the same figure with or without the code, then okay. But like, again, last week with these DC figures, he didn't do that. The only way to get that new classic Hal Jordan is to buy it with this digital component included. So, again, he's trying to force you to buy, essentially buy the digital stuff in order to get something that you want. And so, trying to say that people shouldn't criticize this or speak out or anything like that for something they don't want when you're trying to force them to buy it, again, the whole idea that any kind of criticism should be considered censorship, I think, is completely ridiculous. But now that you've added, taken this next step where you are essentially trying to force people to buy your digital stuff by including it with something that they would want, you no longer have absolutely any ground to sit there and complain about people who are complaining about your digital stuff. And, I want also just extend an invitation if Todd would like to come to the show and talk in more detail. I'd be more than happy to do that with him, as long as he understands that I would be asking hard questions. I'd be respectful. I would be interested in hearing what he says. But, I'm not interested in interviewing anybody in the toy industry if all they're looking for is just, a fluff piece. I have my ear to, this hobby pretty well. I've been covering it for 20 years. So I have a pretty good idea of what collectors are thinking, and oftentimes, I'd love to ask them questions, or give some pushback on some of their answers. But, and again, I think a lot of people in this industry, they don't want to have to deal with that. So if they think that's going to happen, they're not going to talk to you. But like I say, door is open anytime anyone wants to come in the industry, wants to come and talk about this stuff. It's pretty easy to contact me. My email is on this YouTube channel. Of course, I run one of the largest toy news websites on the internet. I know Todd knows how to contact me because, again, I've interviewed Todd before back in 2020 when the DC Multiverse line launched, and they were the ones who reached out to me to do that interview. And I thought, well, I asked some, somewhat tough questions about DC and things back then. I thought it was completely fair, and I thought it was a really good interview. I have no idea what Todd thought about that interview because I never got any feedback from him or his company, and I've never heard from them again. So I guess they probably didn't like it, but nevertheless, they know how to contact me if Todd would like to come on this show. All right, so that's it for today. Again, I will be doing a live stream this evening where the primary topic of discussion will be speculation on this year's HasLabs for both Marvel Legends and G.I. Joe Classified. That live stream will be starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, so hopefully you can join me there. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything I talked about down in the comment section below. Like this video if you're so inclined. It does help with the YouTube algorithm, I think. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching today's video. Now, if you're new to the channel, please think about hitting that subscribe button. Also hit the bell notification so you're alerted every time I upload a new video. For all the latest action figure news, be sure to head over to toynewseye.com, marvelousnews.com, JediInsider.com, and tformers.com. And remember, action figures are great,